I think the only negative was that I think we said a handful of words you're not supposed to say on Thursday, and otherwise, it was pretty well received.
Welcome back to Any Given Monday with Riggs from Barstool Sports, fresh off their week broadcasting the NV5 Invitational in Chicago. Riggs, first, going into it, how were you going to measure success? Like, what would have made this a successful endeavor for Barstool, for Foreplay? What were you guys going to? Is it a financial aspect? What is it?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thanks for having me. I obviously you're one of my favorite guys on Twitter, have been for a long time. So
Thank you.
catching up, I'm sure will be fun. But yeah, I mean, I think for us, like proving that you could do a broadcast that's compelling, interesting, and not a complete disaster, not like a scar on the game, not unwatchable, but truly, put on a golf show, live golf, and have it be done well in a way that people found entertaining. I think that was kind of the goal. I think there was, some things we do we measure by views, engagement, numbers. Some things we do we measure by purely financial, just trying to make money off it. I think this was really unique in that it was, just kind of a more of a proof of concept, proof that we could actually put on live golf and have it be good and entertaining. And so even if 5 people watched it, I think that, it was more, can we show that, this crew pretty much top to bottom can put on a golf broadcast was sort of the measure of success. And I think going in, we kind of spoke about it. We did a quick debrief Sunday night afterwards on our podcast, and we all kind of admitted going in that this was something we had circled months ago that we were very unsure about. We could kind of do a podcast. We've done 600 or 700 of them. We could make a funny YouTube video. You can edit it in a way that it'll be entertaining, and you get all kinds of cool aesthetics and visuals in there, and it'll be whatever. We could do social stuff. I can live tweet a major championship. We do that all the time, but we've never done anything like this before. So going in, I think that was kind of our biggest concern and our biggest measure of success was, can we kind of do justice to the storylines and how serious this is for the players involved, and can we make it interesting and not a disaster? So that was kind of our measure of success.
Is it conscious to go into it, Riggs? Like, you guys have a very, very loyal following, so I assume you know that the Barstool crowd is going to be there. They're a very loyal crowd. They're going to be engaged, and finding the balance of playing to those guys, which is like joking around, talking shit to each other, those kind of things, and also bringing in, obviously the tours involved, but bringing in people who might not follow Barstool on a regular basis and bring them into it. Is that a tough line for you guys to what, like, you don't want to piss off is way too strong a word, but you don't want to lose who you are as Barstool, but also find that balance of putting on a golf broadcast while not losing who you are. Was that a tough line to kind of jump through?
I think going in, I thought it would be for sure. I think there were a lot of nerves and uncertainties about that going in and leading up to it, and eventually we kind of learned and sort of had I kind of had a moment Wednesday talking with some of the guys from our crew of realizing that if we tried to do a pretty traditional broadcast just with us subbed in for other names, Trevor Immelman or Terry Gannon or Dan Hicks or whomever, that it was going to suck. It was just going to suck. It would just be a shittier version of what other people do that are better at that. And instead, it was, we love golf. Like our whole crew is obsessed with golf. That, I think that's probably one thing that gets lost is that, yeah, we are Barstool. We like to entertain. We like to give each other shit. We like to bust each other's balls. We like to hold everyone accountable publicly, including ourselves. But we also just are obsessed with the game of golf. When I get a week free of work or vacation, I book a buddy's trip and go play golf 36 holes a day every day. When if people walk into my apartment, they're like, they laugh out loud because the only thing that's decorative in my apartment is just golf stuff everywhere, golf flags, golf photos, Tiger Woods stuff. So golf bags, so it's like, that's just what we love, love, love golf. So, we sort of were able to, I think, bring up the sort of professional showcasing of the golf part of it before we even started by hiring and
You're good.
and outsourcing sort of the production of the whole thing to Brant Packer, who's been, doing golf broadcasts forever. He's one of the best in the business. Everyone I told that we were doing, the broadcast and that he was sort of behind it, we're like, oh, you have no idea how huge that is. So that was sort of checked even before we started, and that the golf's going to be shown. And then, the willingness of the players and of the Korn Ferry Tour as a whole to sort of play ball. Those guys loved the exposure. They were very excited about Barstool going in, which is always a little bit humbling, right? There's always sort of this almost like self-made tension that we create when you go to something like that, where you just don't want to bother people. This is their livelihood. This is their profession. Golf requires an insane amount of focus to play it well and to not slip up, to not make a triple like Trace, like that's, you got to do that for 6-7 days straight if you include all the practice rounds and everything. So you just don't want to fuck with people, and then here we are sort of like, oh, we're kind of the class clowns. What's going on? And they were such troopers. The players were, our on-course guys were saying, like, the players were seeking them out throughout the round of like, hey, come on over here with that mic and stuff. So that made it kind of a very seamless, natural blend between the two, and really allowed us to kind of free up and just do our thing. It would be one thing if we were sort of placeholders, right? I think there's some folks who think that like we were sort of tasked by Barstool of like, go cover golf because we're not covering golf, when it's the complete other way around. Anyone that's been successful at Barstool by carving out their own lane, creating their own franchise, is done it because they're obsessed with whatever they cover. If it's, my friend Robbie Fox, who's obsessed with Star Wars and MMA and UFC, and like, he carved out a niche there where now he's been able to interview Conor McGregor and Dana White and the folks that are obsessed with hockey or the Spit and Chicklets guys. And like, Dave Portnoy has never tasked or assigned anyone to do anything. And so my whole point saying all of that is like, we're obsessed with golf. We have really good chemistry because we've been doing this for 7 or 8 years. And we had the professionalism and sort of the very sophisticated, experienced broadcasting element of it, which really freed us up in the booth and our on-course guys to kind of just do our thing and make fun of each other, get excited. Our guys were fist pumping, when Fishburne made that 40-foot eagle putt on the 72nd hole, like, we were excited about it. So we were really kind of realized, a few days into preparation last week that, I kind of threw the notes out and was like, no one's watching so the rigs can tell them what this guy shot 4 weeks ago in, Missouri. Like, nobody gives a shit about that. We have, we could put that stuff on the screen, and if we do our own thing, the golf will stand for itself. Those guys are unbelievable. You had to shoot 25 under to get into a playoff. And if we could kind of make it interesting with our own personalities, then we thought it could go really well. And I honestly think it blew like all of our expectations out of the water.
Yeah. And from the players' perspective, I think everyone thought that too. I thought they were blown away by the coverage. And like you said, none of these guys, obviously it's what I cover every day. Like, these guys don't get any exposure. So, the feedback I got from players was they thought it would be more invasive. It wasn't at all. They found your spot in there. What's have you had a conversation with the tour since Sunday night, Riggs? And if so, what has their feedback been?
Yeah, I just got some notes from folks, that were incredibly thankful and universally positive. I think the only negative was that I think we said a handful of words you're not supposed to say on Thursday, and otherwise, it was pretty well received. So I hopped on a flight, Sunday night, and I had an event yesterday in Columbus, and I caught a couple flights last night and got to Greensboro. So I haven't really had a ton of time to catch up. It was more, let's focus on last week. Let's get let's try to nail this. Let's do the best that we can. And then we'll kind of regroup and see what we can do moving forward. But I'd be stunned if we don't do more. I'd love to do more Korn Ferry tour. Would love to kind of see, where we can nudge our way into and do more. But yeah, we got quite a few notes from folks at the Korn Ferry tour, at the tour, players, agents that were really excited. They thought it went very well. Parents, families of some of the players out there. So yeah, it was about as nervous about something that we've done
Mhm.
as I've been in a really, really long time, just because it was outside of our comfort zone, like I kind of described at the beginning. And going outside your comfort zone in this job that I've had, it's my 8th year is kind of rare at this point. You're
Mhm.
pretty used to almost any environment you're thrust into. And that one was completely different. 3 hours a day. It feels daunting. It's live, right? Like, you know, it- today's culture, it's very sensitive, it's very touchy. So we're going to be live. Like we could say anything when we do a podcast. It's like we
Yeah.
could cut it if we say something, idiotic or something comes off wrong that could be problematic. You got to be really careful. And now we're going to be up there. We're going to be live for 3 hours a day. It's hot outside. We admittedly don't know that much about the Korn Ferry tour, right? If we stepped
Yeah.
on a range or into a booth in the PGA tour, like almost any group you put up there, we would probably know one or two of the guys pretty well in the group and at least know quite a bit about all three guys in the group. And Korn Ferry tour, there's outside of a handful of guys, I almost didn't even recognize any names or faces
Yeah.
for the most part. And so then going from that to being able to put on a broadcast and having it go pretty well was cool. I think it was like I said, we learned after the first half hour or so the flow of things, and then I think that we kind of realized even before we went live that we'd been freed up to sort of do what we do best. And if that comes across while there's really, really, really good world class golf being shown as well, that I thought it would at least be a B minus or something. Yeah, we think it went pretty well.
Did you go into this with a long-term goal of like proving it on the Corn Ferry level, maybe doing it more and then having it? Is there an ultimate goal, Riggs? Like, hey, I'd love to have an alternate broadcast at a PGA Tour event. Is there an ultimate goal? And if so, what is it? Is there, now that went well, where's the next hurdle? Is there a next
Yeah,
hurdle?
I wouldn't say there's an ultimate goal, but there's clearly a thirst for us to do more.
Mhm.
I thought it was really fun. It's work is. I talk about that a lot. Like people feel like we probably have the best job on earth, and we
Mhm.
probably do. But it also at times, no matter what you're doing, feels like work. Whether you hear guys on the PGA Tour talk about it. I think that playing on the PGA Tour, for anyone who grew up playing sports, who follows sports on a general level, would point to the PGA Tour and be like, that's the greatest profession in the world. Those guys get
Yeah.
to compete, right? Like we're all competitors at heart. Like we love to compete. They get to compete. They get to go to the most beautiful golf courses in the world, and they get to play for a ton of money. And even, we hear them talk all the time. It's a grind. I'm sure there are many, many days, weeks when they're on the road where they're miserable, where they just wish they were at home doing something different. And there's elements of our job as well that are like that, where it's traveling or you're mingling and you want to be as nice as you can to everybody that you're mingling with, because those are our fans. They allow us to have this really cool job, but it feels like work a lot. That last week was genuinely just really fun. Like waking up in the
Mhm.
morning and having to wait until 2:30 when our broadcast window went live. It was like we were anxious to get on there, get rolling, talking about and covering golf live, calling golf live, watching it unfold while you get to be kind of the voice of that broadcast. It was insanely fun, and everybody in our crew thought that as well. So we've definitely spoken among ourselves about like, what do you think could be next? I don't think that style or what we did, and again, that was our first time ever trying it, so we can be refined or tweaked or whatever, but I don't think that style is for, the back nine of the Open Championship. But,
Yeah.
I think for sure that, I can't even fathom why we wouldn't get a shot to do a PGA Tour live like coverage Thursday and Friday of a couple featured groups that maybe have a
Yeah.
personality or two in that group that we're close with, and you get our guys on course. Like I don't see how that wouldn't be an additive thing for sure. And LPGA, I think there's an enormous opportunity on the LPGA. You know, I think there's a lot of parallels between the LPGA and the Korn Ferry Tour of like how good these players are and how little exposure they get. Probably not, you know, their exposure doesn't meet how world class they are. And then obviously the Korn Ferry Tour, you know, we'd like to do more with the Korn Ferry Tour for sure. I don't know that we could do 12 events a year. I don't know that, but man, if you highlight a couple big events a year that we're there and we're doing it, and it means, you know, it's an impactful event on the schedule. I think that kind of bucket of potential opportunities is something that we're very, very interested in. And, you know, I don't know how locked up broadcasting rights are. I don't know how locked up and difficult it would be for us to do something related to the PGA Tour, the LPGA Tour. But the Korn Ferry Tour made it incredibly easy. They were, you know, they really, really wanted to get this done from the very early stages. And that, you know, kudos to them. All this positive press, all the amount of people I'm seeing on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. The article from Golf Week talking about how, you know, folks never been this glued into many broadcasts ever, let alone a Korn Ferry Tour one. It's shout out to the Korn Ferry Tour folks that sort of saw that vision and said, you know, hey, Barstool, you know, we'll take this risk. We're gonna allow you guys to do something you've never done before with our product. You know, that's kind of a ballsy call from them. So yeah, we definitely have an appetite to do more for sure.
Did they approach you, Riggs, or what? Did you approach them? How did the conversation even start to get to this point?
Yeah, I believe they sort of approached us, you know, more so than we approached them. We had been kind of talking about the Korn Ferry Tour and Q School Finals last fall. Really good friend of mine, Alistair Doherty, who I know you've kind of showcased some of his story and journey out there. But you know, good friend of mine over the last year and a half. I got to know him in Scottsdale. He was caddying at Silverleaf to save up money so that he could try to Monday qualify into events, try to make it on the Korn Ferry Tour. If he did make it on the Korn Ferry Tour, you know, he could budget out a year and to watch him make it through stage 1, stage 2, and then get to final stage Q School and not be able to watch any of it, like no shots whatsoever, was crazy to me. It was infuriating. It was like, this golf is outside of a major championship and a handful of other events. Like, if you understand the stakes, that golf at Q School final stage is as intense and meaningful and highest stakes that any human could possibly be playing golf in. And you can't watch it. It's just shot link. You're refreshing the website. Volunteers out there doing the best they can, but they might get it wrong sometimes. Then they would be changing scores, and you're just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, how can I not watch this? And so we were kind of talking about that on the show. I think that probably led to the Korn Ferry Tour reaching out a little bit. And then, you know, our team, All Business Pete, who's sort of our head tech guy behind the scenes, who's, you know, he's the one that has spearheaded the college basketball live stream tournament that we did last year, the Arizona Bowl, you know, college football bowl game that we did last year, the NYPD FDNY hockey game that we streamed this year, and then the golf. So, you know, he clearly felt he was at a point where Barstool had been able to live stream coverage of a couple different sports before. Golf's a different animal. It's a massive arena out there. You know, your ice rink or your field is 18 holes instead of, you know, just one concentrated spot. So it's a bit of a behemoth to cover. But yeah, he sort of met with the Korn Ferry Tour folks first, then brought it to us. And then, you know, we kind of, after a handful of calls, said, you know, all right, I think we could try this.
All right, real quick, what was the biggest clusterfuck of the week? Delay. There was a delay that obviously maybe something people didn't see on the broadcast that was the biggest like hurdle, clusterfuck, whatever to over that you guys overcame in a week.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there was the delay, I think on Saturday was when there was a quite the delay. Was a bummer because then instead of guys starting, you know, instead of our broadcast starting with kind of the back nine and taking people through the conclusion, it was, you know, we like dropped coverage with, you know, 4 or 5 holes left. And you learn that kind of the labor rules of how the production folks had been hired, that we couldn't just go until golf finished. Cause like I said, we were having a great time. We were like, we'll go live for 6 hours until the golf is finished. But you learn that if they had been out there working for X amount of hours throughout that day, we had to kind of shut off the broadcast window. So we really didn't have the option to finish the coverage. So I think that was Saturday, might have been Friday or Saturday. One of that was probably the biggest thing where we were kind of like, let's just stay live there. We literally can't. And so we kind of dropped coverage before our groups that we've been watching all day even got to their last 3 or 4 holes. Which again, I think the nature of our broadcast, people didn't really give a shit. They mostly were just kind of into it to see, right? The beauty of our fans and our following is that they're just as invested in kind of our storyline and our success as anything else. Like they're following the Korn Ferry tour because we're highlighting it, and they're following the NV5 because we're highlighting it, but they're also kind of on pins and needles to be like, can these fucking idiots do this? Like, oh my God. So they kind of enjoy that as much as anything else, which really allows us a free pass in those types of scenarios where, if we cut to somebody, or at one point, there was a technical issue where they were just showing like a camera that was sitting on a golf cart seat that was showing water bottles. And we were, I could hear somebody in the back being like, "Oh shit, sorry," and we were like, "Leave it on there. We'll judge those water bottles. We'll talk about those water bottles for 5 minutes. I don't give a shit." And so, and Brant kind of learned, like, I think Pete, All Business Pete, was telling us that there was a moment for him where he was showing the leaderboard, before they go to commercial, right? Like a broadcast will show the leaderboard for 20 seconds or so, and they'll do like 2 or 3 changes to show the leaderboard. And by the second or third day they were doing that, we were like, who gives a shit about this? We're not going to talk about the leaderboard. Instead, we were like, so we started talking about the shot of the bunker that was behind the leaderboard. And we were like, wow, it was just like the most bland bunker shot, like background that I could ever see. So we started talking about, wow, look at that rake. Like, that's exciting. And so Brant actually learned halfway through that he just got rid of the leaderboard, and we just for 10 seconds riffed about the bunker that they were showing behind. And so, we can kind of, the beauty of Barstool is we call it the Barstool difference. Like, we fuck stuff up all the time. Like we did, I think 4 or 5 years ago, we were doing a Facebook Live college football show, and they did it in Iowa. I wasn't actually on the show, but it was like Dave, Big Cat, and Trent, and they went live for 30 minutes from Iowa with a big crowd, and it was just a silent show. It just had no audio, and they didn't know that until the show was live for 15 minutes or something. So they're out there, and everyone watching on Facebook Live, it was just silent. It was a silent show. So people love that, right? That's the Barstool difference. They're just like, look at these clowns that somehow continue to be successful while fucking stuff up all the time. So we're able to kind of roll with the punches, luckily, when things get messed up like that. And yeah, so, there were definitely some hurdles. There were some, there's some bickering among people on the broadcast that, was public. We just air that stuff out publicly and have fun with it. And, if somebody says something incredibly obvious or stupid or a meaningless insight, we kind of have ombudsman on the coverage that'll be like, why'd you say that? Who cares about that? So, like I said, we can kind of roll with the punches on that front.
Yeah, a little behind the scenes story. Logan McAllister. So for those listening that didn't know, Tom Whitney I caddied for, and Logan McAllister, Ben Coles was the feature group on one of the feature groups on Friday. So we're walking down it's 100 fucking degrees. I've never been more miserable on a golf course in my life. And Logan goes, "Hey, dude," he says to me, this is before the cameras have come out. He's like, "Hey, can you look at my ass and see if I have swamp ass?" And and I look at his ass, and it's cheek, like most for men golfers out here. Like when you get in a really hot day, your crack gets sweaty through your pants. And Logan's cheeks were both wet, and his crack wasn't. And I was like, "Logan, I've never seen this in my life, dude." I was like, "Your cheeks are fucking sweaty, but not your crack." And he's like, "Oh man, the Barstool guys are gonna hammer me for that." And then Logan made an 8 on a par 4 with, what he described in the interview with you guys is like one shot he makes every 2 years. It was a really straightforward bunker shot, and he just sculled it into a bush. And Dan just talked about his swamp ass, and we all had a good laugh about it later.
No, and look, that's kind of what we're gonna do, right? Like, if we see something like that, and the beauty of that is that he knows, he's playing along, he gets it, right? He's in on the joke. Nobody takes it personally. Nobody's like, "Oh, those guys were so mean to me." If somebody's gonna be like that, then we just won't feature him on the coverage. But that's the beauty of it, right? You should be able to laugh at yourself. You should be able to have a good time with it. And yeah, he was great. We had a bunch of those guys came up into the booth. He came up into the booth the day before. So did Joe Jr. and just kind of giving insights while we're talking golf, covering golf. It was fun. It was like I said, really, really fun to do it. I thought all the players were complete troopers, and yeah, I hope we get to do it again.
All right, last question. you posted, I don't know, last week, I think, like your first video at Barstool, and you're in London or something in an American onesie, and you used to send a joke, you just sent your expenses to Dave and he wrote you a check. Like, do you, on a serious note, do you ever just personally reflect, Riggs? Like, I do it a lot, didn't really intend to get into this. Is like, that wasn't that many years ago. And now you guys did a full golf pod or broadcast of a Korn Ferry event, and with the goal of, not goal, the possibility that you're going to be doing this at a PJ Tour event one day. Like, do you ever just go like, what the fuck has happened in the last X amount of years?
Yeah. Yeah, quite a bit, you know. I think for me, right, it's a mix of trying to enjoy it and then also being an ambitious guy. That's like we want to keep moving forward. And there's those moments where something doesn't go right, or you're having a shitty day, or whatever it might be, where I'll just do basically in my own head exactly what you just said. Where I'm like, hey man, look, this is fucking awesome. The fact that we're here and at this point and have this opportunity, like you said, it hasn't been that many years. I mean, I started in early 2016, and we really didn't start the golf stuff until early 2017. And so in a little over, if you call it 8 years or so ago, it was like all of the folks that listen to our stuff, watch our stuff, buy our merchandise. I was one of them. I was just in the exact same spot that they're in, as working a desk sales job. And starting on Monday, we would book our tea time for Saturday, and that foursome would have a group text, and we would just go back and forth all week about what the match is going to be, what we're going to wear, how excited we were, the whole deal. And so to then be thrust 7, 8 years later into kind of, it feels like thrust into a position where like my whole life and job is golf, and you have kind of this influence in the public world of golf, is like laugh out loud funny. It's like, how the hell did all of this happen? It's the biggest cliche is like, you feel like you're going to wake up, and I get that sensation a lot. I feel like I'm going to, like, sometimes when I wake up from a dream, I'm like, please let it be fucking real. Like, please, like, don't let that be something that's just boom, vanished and gone. So yeah, I have kind of that reflective moment a lot, but you also don't want to get too swept up in that, right? In order to kind of keep pushing, keep moving forward, keep trying to have a difference. We get a lot of messages from folks that are like, hey man, you guys got me into golf. Thank you so much. Now I'm down to a 20 handicap, and I've broke 100 for the first time. And yeah, I always tell people, how the hell did you get into our podcast if you weren't a golfer? And they're like, my buddies all listen to it and sent it to me. So I said, fuck it. And I started listening. And then eventually I kind of got the balls to go out one time and hit balls. And now I'm a year and a half in, and I'm obsessed with golf. And that's really, really, really cool, because I think that, we all that have the bug of this game, like, I say with my buddies, one of our ongoing inside jokes is we'll be out on a Saturday and have, 3 or 4 cocktails in on the back nine, and be like, like, what the fuck would we do if we didn't play golf? Like, what would we do? What would we be doing on this Saturday that could possibly be anything close to this? The fact that we have a group of buddies, and we get to be out here, and we get to hit a golf ball that goes a couple hundred yards in the air and try to make a big putt and then talk about it afterwards. Like, that's unbelievably cool. And so, yeah, it's very surreal for us, I think, to get to this point. I think, like, reflecting upon that is very important for anybody. And I think that kind of also allows us to be us and realize that the guys that come play in our tournaments, or follow us on Twitter or say hi to us wherever, is like, they kind of love following us because they see us as them. We're the same people. We just happen to have this kind of insane job and spot in the golf world at this point. So yeah, long answer, but at the end of the day, the answer is yes. It's very important, I think, to kind of reflect upon that stuff. And I think till the day I die, it'll be kind of surreal, like how did all that happen? That's crazy.
Riggs, thanks. I thought the broadcast was, I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I know it was really good. Players, I was inside the ropes. Players the feedback was great. So, I mean, you guys, congratulations. Don't need my support, obviously. You guys doing it on your own, but man, it was really good. So congratulations to you guys for what you've done to build this.
No, man, I appreciate it. Like I said, I've been following you forever. This is sort of we kind of dipped our toes into your world, it feels like. So kind of seeing some of those stories and those personalities, right? I mean, at the end of the day, those players, like they're all people with their own networks and families and caddies and people relying on them or people that they're trying to support by playing well and to kind of be immersed in that for a whole week and at the dining hall and seeing, Rafa Campos all the time, who's just even after he missed the cut, he was like around the dining hall all weekend, just shooting the shit. Like, and it's just you're exposed to this whole community and this whole sort of fraternity of people that are out there, kind of a traveling troupe trying to make it to the next level. And you're obviously a huge part of that. You showcase those guys. So I've enjoyed following you forever, and to be kind of in your world for a week was very cool. So I appreciate everything that you do, honestly, for all those guys. I know that they do, and for all of kind of the underexposed golf stories, it's really kind of an incredible thing that you've carved out. So I appreciate you having me on. I'm glad people enjoyed the broadcast, and hopefully we get to talk about this more.
Awesome. Thanks, Riggs.
Thank you. Appreciate it.